So welcome everybody to another edition of the networking channel. My name is Jim Kurose. I'm a longtime professor at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and now also a visitor at the Sorbonne and the University of Tokyo. I'm on the organizing committee for the networking channel, and I'm so excited about today's edition. We're going to be having a fireside chat with Brendan Ittelson, who's the Chief Ecosystem Officer at Zoom. And we're going to be having a sort of a back and forth, just a chat. We're going to keep it informal, maybe a few slides along the way. Our chat's going to run about 40 minutes, and then we'll just open it up for questions. But also, if you have questions along the way, you can either use the question and answer feature of Zoom. Brendan, you can probably tell us how that all came about if we wanted to get into the details of that. And then there's also the chat. So again, our guest today is Brendan Ittelson. So Brendan, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I am so excited to be here and chatting with everyone. I started my career actually in networking. It's what got my start in technology. So I'm so excited for the conversation and to dive in.
Okay, great. Well, actually, I see looking at some of the people who are here, I recognize a lot of the names, and so I think everybody's going to be really excited to hear what you have to say. Maybe I could start just by giving everybody a little bit of background about you. You're currently the Chief Ecosystem Officer at Zoom. Before that, you were the CTO from 2020 to 2023. And then you have a job I can hardly even imagine being the head of global support for Zoom from 2015 into 2020. And prior to that, Brendan worked as a contractor and and as a civilian DoD employee in the federal sector, creating, implementing, and supporting various identity management systems. So that also sounds really cool. He's got a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Oregon and a certificate in identity management from the Naval Postgraduate School. And I think it's also fair for me to say this is the first time I've ever had a discussion with an Emmy Award winner. So last month, Brendan and three others from Zoom were awarded a Primetime Emmy Award for Engineering, Science, and Technology. And that was in recognition of a platform that's called Zoom for Broadcast Technology. I'm going to just read you a quote from the Television Academy, who brings us the Emmys, that describes Zoom for Broadcast as a platform that turns Zoom meetings into broadcast-ready feeds, extracting individual high-quality video and audio from remote participants and routing them into professional live productions as though they were in studio. And this gives producers deep control over each guest's AV settings, uses Zoom's global cloud infrastructure to deliver low latency, reliable streams, and without costly equipment or complex setups, and elegantly scales on top of that. Sorry, the on top of that was not a direct quote. In addition to all those other things. So congratulations on that Emmy Award, Brendan, to you and your team. And let me just close this introduction to say that I'm just and many of us here are huge Zoom fanboys and fangirls. And thank you for a platform really that has changed for the better what we're able to do. Probably at least half of us are professors here, so we've used it in our teaching. Who knows what we would have done during the pandemic at our academic institutions without Zoom. And on the personal side, it lets me talk with my kids and my grandkids every weekend. So just a wonderful technology. And I'm sure I'm just one of the many hundreds of millions of people who sort of feel that way. So thank you for your technology also.
No, thank you so much. We are honored that we're able to participate in those moments and help make them possible. So uh, so exciting, and I look forward to sharing how all of this works.
Great. Well, you and I were chatting ahead of time, and we talked a little bit about how, we've got some people who might call themselves gearheads here, but also people who are also very interested in services as well at the high level. So maybe if we could just start off, could you say a few words just about, about the meeting and collaboration aspects of Zoom, what's under the hood, how it works, what's under the covers in the cloud-based distributed platform that you've been building over the last 15 years.
Definitely. And I'll maybe start off with a little bit of an introduction about the company and then start to dive
Sure.
into how it works and then love to see how the conversation goes. Um, I know a lot of folks here already know Zoom, but just for sort of a point of reference, we were founded in 2011, about 7,000 employees globally, and we're headquartered in San Jose, California, and that's roughly where I'm located. But it has been an exciting journey with the company because a lot of folks know us for our meetings platform. But over the years and with the collaboration, we've actually built a full suite of tools. You can see there the meetings and our webinars were very early, but we've definitely been ramping up across the collaboration space and expanding all of the offerings that we have, from meetings to whiteboard to collaboration solutions. And so when you start to put it all together, you get what we affectionately refer to as our sort of wheels of Zoom. So many folks know us for meetings, which is right there in the center, but there's so much more to the platform. But in its underlying platform, we spent a lot of time designing the architecture, building it for scale and reliability, and doing all the core components that help make all of this possible and how all of it works. But because we have a lot of folks that are super technical here and want to learn the inner workings, love to dive in to like how this session is working right now and what that experience was in terms of how you actually connected. So in terms of Zoom, we've always focused on how we make it a super simple interface and spent a lot of time on the engineering of how to ensure things just work. So that takes a lot of analysis of what the happy path is and then potential failure points along that way, and then architecting in that. So when you connected to this meeting today, what actually happened is it reached out to our backend to figure out where this meeting was located, and it actually provided you with 3 data centers to try to connect to this meeting. And at that point, your client actually tried to reach out to all 3 of those data centers to figure out which one had the fastest response. Once it found which one had the fastest response, and we have a bit of an algorithm that does the calculation there, your client connected to that data center, and then we have a private mesh that goes between all of our data centers in the world and starts to interconnect all of them so that everyone is connecting to their closest point of presence. And then based off that point of presence, we take care of all the routing in between. And so one of the fun items with the Zoom client that a lot of people don't know is you can actually see where you're connected into our global network. So to give you an idea of our points of presence, we've got data centers around the globe here. But if folks have their client open, and we can maybe have a little bit of fun here to see, if you go into your settings menu, which will be under one of the menus in the upper left, or my favorite way of getting to it is if you have the audio or video icon in the lower left-hand corner, that little up chevron, you can get into your settings. But once you're in there, you'll notice that there is a tab close to the bottom called Statistics. For all those that enjoy getting it under the covers into the weeds, the Statistics tab is one of the favorites because it actually talks about everything that's happening, and it shows all the metrics that we're looking at to optimize the Zoom experience. And what you'll see there is there's a section that says Data Center, and at the very end, you'll see a 3-letter code in a parentheses. So I actually see that I'm connected to AMS right now. Others might be connected to other options depending on how we're distributing the load. So if there are folks that want to put that in the chat, we could have a little bit of fun to see where we are distributed around the globe right now. Uh, so that is our Amsterdam data center at the moment that I'm connecting to. But at that point, everyone gets connected, everything gets meshed, and then we use our proprietary video and audio protocol to start routing traffic. Uh, and that's where it gets really exciting because we've actually built a platform where our data centers are actually working more like routers than anything else in switching audio and video signals between participants. And that actually means that for different participants, you'll get different quality of audio and video depending on the performance that we see of your system. And that's where the statistics tab is kind of fun, because if you go to the audio or video tab, you'll start to see all the statistics that we're using to start to determine what resolution video should be sent to your system for each participant that's there. And that also means that we can dynamically adjust so that if someone has lower bandwidth, we can send them a lower resolution, while someone with higher bandwidth will send higher resolution. And we only need to send the video streams that are important to you, not all the video streams and not all the audio streams. So we're able to optimize the network communication based off of what we're seeing on system performance. So that's a very quick high level. Love to dive in further on any of that. Oh, and you might be on mute, Jim. The if we have T-shirts that say it because it is so common.
Oh, I've got to get one of those. I've been using Zoom, I don't know, 7 years easily, and never looked at the statistics. And I like to do internet measurements, so that's totally cool. I should have looked at that. So you said something very interesting about. So I have this picture of the mesh of your interconnected. Actually, you call them pops, which is great. And so people are using, I don't know, the DNS or something to connect to somebody nearby, maybe like a CDN does or something like that. And then do you do that final, I want to say mixing, but determining what streams come from the pop? Say a lot of us are connected to Amsterdam, I'm connected to Amsterdam. What comes to me from Amsterdam is dynamically switched in Amsterdam. So if if I switch my gallery view, for instance, to something else, then the video that I actually get changes. Is that what you were saying?
Exactly. And so a few things, and we'll start diving through those. So on the actual data center selection, uh, we initially looked at things like doing any cast IPs to try to get to the closest, or doing like geo DNS. And while that was a nice solution, we actually found out that it didn't always work in all situations. There are challenges that we've seen at times where, like for a corporate organization, they might have registered all of their IP space to a single address, but they've distributed it around the world, and they have their corporate data exiting at various points, but it all from a geo IP might look the same. Or for their DNS, they're doing centralized DNS resolution in the corporation, even though they're distributed clients. So what we do is we use the geo IP information to figure out a rough idea of where we believe the person is in the world. And then we provide the multiple data centers that we think are applicable to that person, because we realize that that might not be the right one. And so that's where the actual end client doing we call it a ping test to the 3 data centers at once, lets us ensure that we're always hitting the best performance and not just what theoretically should be best based off of some of the signals that we're seeing. So once it's connected and we've got that mesh going on, uh, you're exactly right. It's doing more packet switching. So each client is sending up details about its statistics, and we actually record those statistics so that we can optimize and report out to network admins to see what the sort of state of their participants are. I I affectionately like to refer to it as we have one of the most amazing internet weather reports out there, because we're getting all of the signal from across the internet in terms of people's performance. Um, but based off of that, it's dynamically switching. And when our data centers start to do that meshing across, they even optimize across that mesh. So the points of presence will only share information across the link between them if a client underneath them actually needs that audio or video stream.
Uh-huh.
And,
So you're
and
doing some of that mixing actually at different points, I guess, within the I guess at the entrance to the mesh and then also at the exit to the mesh.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
And what's what's nice is because we're doing the individual video streams and individual audio streams, we're actually not doing the compositing or the audio mixing, you could say, on the cloud. It's actually happening on your client device. Our cloud infrastructure is just being a really efficient router at making sure you've got all the packets you need to composite the image and the audio for the use case that you have.
Uh-huh. Cool. Wow. And so say if well, I don't, this is sort of way down in the weeds. If I mute somebody intentionally, does that mean, and I'm the only one, say, hanging off of one particular pop that you have, that audio stream doesn't even arrive? I'm just curious about how far my signaling goes back into your mesh to determine what eventually is delivered to me.
Yeah, so as a host, when you're changing settings for participants in the meeting or when an individual is muting themselves, those signals are actually going all the way back down to some of those end clients to tell that client that you have been muted in the meeting and you can't speak. But then we also have a secondary safeguard on their entry point to make sure that if somehow the client was able to bypass that, it wouldn't get into the mesh to go further within it.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of a subscription model when you think about how the data starts to flow across.
Uh-huh. Okay. That's neat. You mentioned network admins. That took me a little bit by surprise, although when I thought about it, maybe it didn't. So I imagine uh, I'm just a university professor, right? So I use it under my university account, and we do larger scale meetings like this. But I imagine for corporate customers, when you say you talk to network admins, somehow I'm imagining a company that is doing a large briefing or something like that internally, and that's what you were talking about talking to network admins about what I guess people within that administrative domain within that company are seeing. Is that what you were saying?
Definitely. And it's one of the things with video being uh, a platform where you want extremely low latency, but can be bandwidth intensive. One of the groups that we're always working very closely with is the IT organization and the networking ops organization to make sure that they're optimizing their network. Um, and we have very large enterprises that have very, very complex and dynamic networks that span the globe. And so as we talk to them, they have a lot of different requirements and they're also dealing with a lot of different challenges. And unfortunately, bandwidth isn't always unlimited. And especially as folks started to come back into the offices where video was more of an expectation, they hadn't necessarily upgraded their infrastructure to
Mhm.
support it at the level that they were anticipating.
Mhm.
And we have companies that at times want to do things like organization wide, all hands with video, where they want everyone in the company to be on the video signal receiving it. And you can imagine if all of those video signals were coming from our cloud, that would very quickly saturate a network pipe.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of things that we do to help optimize for the admin. First and foremost, for the host of the meeting on the dashboard that we have within our product, we actually provide all those statistics that you were seeing in the client for all the participants that are within their account. The IT organizations love this because when they get that call saying that a senior executive or the CEO had a problem with one of their meetings, they can quickly go and go, hey, let's see, I see that they had packet loss at this time and their Wi-Fi signal degraded. Let's cross-check our wireless controller. Yep, they were switching between access points, or maybe we have some poor coverage in this part of the building. Let's go ahead and square that away and solve that.
Uh-huh.
But on top of that, we give them even more controls. So naturally, some organizations are doing DSCP markings. So our client can actually do that tagging, and we allow them to customize the tags for data that is flowing across their network out to our data centers so that they can do all that QoS routing. Now, that's great in the case of it being a logged in client, but not everyone's always logged in. There might be a range of things there. So we've actually worked with options for organizations that are using transparent proxies across their organization, where uh, as their clients are reaching out to our data center, they can inject a special header, and at that point, we can realize that it is a client from a certain customer connecting into our backend, and then help send down optimized profiles and configurations for them.
I see. So that transparent proxy, is that actually then something running in the client, in the corporate, not your network, in the company's network then? And so in some sense, you're then doing, I don't know, the mixing and what you would normally do in a backbone, in your backbone, you then do that in the corporate network and,
Well, we can do that as well, which is really
oh,
exciting. So the with the corporate proxy, if they're doing like content filtering, they can do this insertion so that we can get better signal to know who they are and policies that they want to apply. But we have products that actually allows them to basically put a POP within their network.
right,
So if they have their own data centers, folks can connect internally to that POP, which was running within their walls. Or one of the other things that has taken off recently, which we're super excited about, is a solution that we call Mesh, which if they don't have a data center, especially for large webinars, we start to understand what clients are within their organization connecting. And instead of them connecting all the way back to our cloud to get the audio and video and screen share streams, we actually start to pair them with other clients within their network so that we're only sending a handful of media streams into the network, and then the
right.
network is distributing it amongst one another. So a great mix of cloud and peer-to-peer networking combined together to optimize the experience and optimize bandwidth.
Uh-huh. You know, I was going to ask you about QoS and QoE. I guess you mentioned that already in that you're using uh, uh, DSCP points, but you allow people to control that. Somehow I imagined, I mean, I've noticed, right? My video can fade, but the audio always works, and I imagine control and stuff like that gets high priority. So maybe you have recommended settings and then people can tweak them as they choose.
Definitely. And DSCP is just one option that we have for folks to configure to help do the optimization. The other thing is within our web portal, we allow the network engineers to actually set bandwidth caps or ways that they want certain data to be processed to work better within their environment. For example, we have some customers that say, you know, for this internal IP range, it's great, use whatever bandwidth is available, but for this IP range, we know that those are limited branch offices. Max your bandwidth out at 800 kilobits. And so for us, we then go, okay, with the 800 kilobits that we have and the media streams that this person wants to subscribe to, how do we optimize those bits to give the best experience?
Uh-huh.
So we'll prioritize the audio. We'll maybe adjust the resolution that the person is seeing. And if they're in a gallery view versus an active speaker, it doesn't make sense for us to send like 1080p. We can maybe send a 360p or a 90p depending on how small they are on the
Uh-huh.
screen, and adjust frame rates and the like.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You mentioned optimizing the experience multiple times now, and I'm wondering how you actually do that. So I don't think I've ever been asked on a Zoom call, what did I think about my experience? So I've not been queried. I mean, do you do user studies? Do you do A/B testing and I don't know, test stickiness or something like that? How do you do that?
So we do all of the above, and then we do have an option that is available in Zoom for folks if their account has turned it on to rate the meeting positive or negative,
Ah,
and
okay.
we start to aggregate that data. And sort of that statistics page that you saw, which had the packet loss, the bit rate, um, the resolution, the CPU usage, your Wi-Fi RSSI, all of that we're logging every few seconds, and we have
Uh-huh.
a big data team that is looking across all of that data across the platform, looking at how we can optimize in every single way in terms of how are we adjusting the resolution, how are we adjusting the priority, are there things with our video codec that we can adjust to do things slightly better in terms of our transport
Mm-hmm.
to optimize bandwidth?
Mm-hmm.
The the other thing that I think is kind of fun these days is, especially with all the new network tech that's coming out, we're able to play more with different network providers and how we can better signal to them. One of the projects I know we worked on recently that was super exciting is with the rollout of 5G. There's the concept of being able to request a dedicated slice for high bandwidth applications.
Uh-huh.
So Zoom is actually able to uh, reach out to the device, make an OS system call to request from the cellular provider a 5G slice when you go on a call that is uh, going to be a higher bandwidth scenario. And all of that as a user is behind the scenes, but we have the infrastructure to talk to all the players along the way to just make that happen, to make it just work.
Wow. So that's like QoS on steroids in the sense that you're not just getting a QoS connection in 5G, you're actually getting a slice. Can I ask who pays for that slice? Is that the
So
period, I guess, or question mark?
Different network providers have thought about that in different ways, and some of it look at an entitlement with a service plan. Some of that look at it as a step up. So the there's definitely the technical side and the business side
Uh-huh.
to it, but the power that we have is we have the flexibility to do it if that user and their device are enabled in that use case.
Uh-huh. Okay. There's a couple of questions that have come along, and then wow, I could sit here and just ask you questions all day. This is so fascinating. But there was a question just again, if you could sort of review, you talked about the data centers that you had, you showed their locations. You've said they do some mixing and filtering and you know, smart forwarding, I guess, and transcoding. What are the other kind of things that happens in those data centers? That was one of the questions.
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting. And when we start to talk about the platform, our data centers are serving either one of two purposes, the servers in them. We have some servers that are doing more processing and data at rest sort of situations, because we have the recordings, we
Recording.
have
Yeah.
um, the all the user content, how we do the playback of that, uh, but more of those static things, AI work that we're doing more of with the platform as well. So you
Okay.
have those sorts of servers, but then we also have a whole set of what we call these real-time servers, and they're the ones that are focusing on the packet switching.
Uh-huh.
And so across that map of data centers that you were seeing, those locations are primarily focused on the real-time data switching applications that we have out there. And so we have a variety of servers that are focused purely on those real-time use cases. And then they're meshing across those processing and data at rest uh, data centers and solutions to then work in harmony with one another.
Hmm. Okay.
And that's one of the other things that I'm realizing I didn't mention is across this entire infrastructure that you see, we give customers choice. So any customer can actually opt out of any of these data centers if for some reason they do not want it for their meetings because of some reason. For example, we have some customers that say, we know you have a global network, but we only want to use servers that are located within the US because we have some regulatory issue.
Right. So compliance, right.
Exactly.
Mhm. Oh, interesting. So you've talked about your data centers. I guess I've read somewhere, I don't know, it's Tech Radar somewhere that occasionally or sometimes you burst dynamically into commercial cloud providers also. So I don't know, is that for scaling on uh, occasional sort of big events or high traffic situations? Or is that sort of a standard feature?
Yeah, so we've always believed in doing a hybrid environment. So we use a mix of major cloud providers, and then we have colo data centers around the world. And so typically the data at rest and sort of those back end processing is typically done in the cloud vendors, and then the real time is often in our colo locations. But if for some reason we have needed to scale very, very rapidly, that's where we've been able to use those cloud providers to also leverage their presence and their dynamic ability to scale quickly to have more coverage across the world.
Okay. So we have another question here. Actually, it comes from someone who was involved in, I think he was involved in RAT, which was an audio tool in the 1990s that I remember. And so his question is, there are multiple solutions for given groups, bandwidth, frame rate, resolution, when you get a mix of demands coming in. And the question is, do you have public UX experiments that could say how you made design choices for the best choices of solutions? I just sort of read that.
Yeah. So we're constantly looking and we are doing internal benchmarks as we adjust our our resolution, as we adjust our audio. And so we're often using standards such as a MOS score, for example, to validate uh, every change that we're making to ensure that we're getting an improvement and figuring out where those edge cases are in terms of where an optimization in a given situation might not be the best. And so a lot of it we get from customer feedback, and part of our loop is we're monitoring so many different channels online as well as uh, what our customers are telling us and naturally all of our support tickets, that all of that data is then feeding back into our internal teams. And since we have this very, very rich telemetry, we can often then go back and root cause and go, okay, given all the metrics that we see, this is what we believe happened in this one. Let's go optimize that use
Right.
case further.
Right. I can see how that measurement infrastructure that you have just plays such a central role. Um, uh, I told you when we were chatting ahead of time that there'll be a lot of gearheads here, and so I think judging from the questions, that's probably true. But I do want to move in just a second on to some of the newer services, especially some of the AI based ones. And but you and I were having a quick conversation earlier. The scaling that Zoom went through, around the pandemic. Um, I don't, you said it wasn't easy, but the technical scaling wasn't maybe the hardest thing. The people scaling was pretty hard. I mean, I just can't imagine being in a company that has to scale their technology by 30x and then has to grow people to support it. So I don't know, could you just say a word about, I don't know, what it was like, what you found maybe easy or not so easy, hard when you were going through that incredible scaling?
It was an absolute wild time at Zoom going through that, but it was also a very mission driven time. And that I think has been one of the things that has really stood out for me with Zoom, and part of the reason that I've stayed with the company and watched it grow is from our CEO Eric. We're so focused on we sort of talk about it internally, delivering happiness. And in this time, we knew that we had the technology to help, and it was such a monumental shift in the world that we felt somewhat of a responsibility to do whatever we could to help connect people and make sure that we were just as reliable as possible. And everyone in the company took that on as priority number one.
Right.
And so literally it was about 30x overnight, and that changes the dynamic. Naturally, our colos had been built with resiliency and excess capacity, but not 30x. So naturally, we were reaching out to all of our partners to figure out where did they have silicon available, where were there extra circuits, where could we start to deploy. But it also meant that we were very quickly shifting our internal teams. Uh, our facilities team, for example, went, we're not going into the facility, but basically did the put me in, coach. Where can we help anywhere else in the organization? So they were jumping on support forums, answering tickets, helping our provisioning teams help create accounts. And the scale and the questions that we were getting in was remarkable. One of the items that always sticks with me, and I think is one of the more interesting ones, especially for a group of network individuals, is I remember like one Friday getting a phone call saying, we're onboarding a customer on Monday. They have a lot of users. They want to make sure we're ready. This was common, so I'm like, okay, that's great. We're going to support them, but why are you calling me? Well, it's the education system for the country of X, and we're worried about saturating the country's internet connection.
Mhm.
So let's start doing back of the napkin calculations of what is the fiber infrastructure in that country? Are we going to saturate it? Are there data centers that we can deploy within the next 24 hours
Wow.
to help get them stood up? Because they're coming online Monday, and if there's a gap in their service, it will impact that organization and their mission. And it's one of the things that we did the homework, we figured out how to get it done, and Monday they came online without a gap. And that was the thing of constantly 12 plus hour days, but that focus on going, how do we help people? How do we onboard new folks to help and grow very, very quickly?
Wow, it sounds like also you leveraged a lot of the connections that you had already made. I imagine if this had happened earlier in the corporate lifetime and you hadn't had those connections with existing colo centers or with cloud providers, that would have been a really hard thing to do.
100%. And that's been a big thing for us, is making sure that we're closely partnered with our cloud providers, with our customers, so that we can really have those open conversations and establish trust. Because with trust across your whole supply chain, it becomes really easy to get the job done and to have those hard conversations. And it's interesting the conversations that folks came to us with those times. We had folks going, hey, can you reduce your resolution to some of our endpoints and to some of our things, because uh, we're having issues with saturation, but we want to make sure that folks can still connect, but how do we do it in a smart and reliable way? And that's where we leaned in of, let's have those great talks and figure it out together. And that just was so valuable, of having had those relationships, having built the trust, and then being able to execute on that trust together.
Mhm. So maybe we can fast forward from, it's not that long ago, from the pandemic to today, and just talk about Zoom's recent focus on being a, I don't know, maybe AI first work platform for human connection. And so probably many of us have used some of your companion 2.0 features like some meeting summarization and things like that. But at some fest, maybe Zoomtopia this year, you unveiled companion 3.0. Maybe you could just say a word about that. Agentic AI seems to be all the rage, and I know there are aspects of that in sort of your current plans and maybe in Companion 3.0.
Yeah, AI is extremely exciting, and especially with the generative side that is coming out now. And this is an area that Zoom has been investing in for many years prior to generative. So, uh, in that optimizing the experience and optimizing items, our AI journey actually started off with things like virtual background, the audio optimization to remove background noise, and some of those features that folks use every day.
That
Um,
fabulous technology, the background noise removal. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's where we started, and then naturally, given the richness of the conversations and the advancements in generative, that's where really been leaning into now of how do we allow AI to further enable individuals to get more done and optimize their day? So, given the rich information that we have in conversations and in meetings, we're really starting to look at how do we go and enable people in this concept of conversation to completion. How can we take something that we discussed here, let AI automatically detect that action item, and then help orchestrate it all the way through the completion of that? And with Zoom's suite of productivity solutions and business applications, it starts to help through all that process. And naturally, with Zoom, you're connected into your various enterprise applications. So we can be having a conversation and go, you know what? We need to file a ticket in our support system. The AI could help with that and then also help foster that along the way so
Mhm.
that we're able to get to that point of getting things done and being able to focus more on connecting and not the administrivia of the day to day.
Mhm. Okay. Cool. Um, I wanted to make sure we had some time for questions, so I'm going to just say
Love it.
publicly to everybody here, if you have questions, please post them in the Q&A. It's very clear. We're talking with someone who can answer any question we could possibly pose about Zoom here, given your great background. Maybe one question I wanted to ask you about AI, and if you can't comment on this, it's 100% fine. You were talking about it from the user experience, and I understand you're a very user-centric and user-facing company. Internally, those of us who are teaching computer science classes and things like that wonder about how the next generation of graduates coming out are going to be, if they're doing jobs in tech, the kind of things they're going to be doing. Do you use that internally also for your work processes, for your developers, for other people?
100%. And the way that we really look at AI is it is a way to augment someone's capabilities. And so we s- we're while there are things that we are starting to leverage AI to do more, it is all in that spirit of helping someone achieve their primary mission. And so, yes, could we send folks to do deep research to do a ton of items and go through the books and do the online searches? Yes. Would I rather have them spending the time reflecting on the data that comes back from those searches and really thinking about that? That's a better use. So we're using AI in those use cases.
Hmm.
Could I have a designer do a lot of mock-ups of different concepts? Maybe. But having a designer say, I'm thinking about X, Y, and Z, can you do a rough for me? And then being able to start doing the experimentation with that and focus more on the refinement than the crude outlines. that's where we start to see these great speed increases within the organization, because we can, as you go from like that 0 to 1 moment, you spend less on the first half and you can really focus in on the second half and the refinement and the detail to make it look really, really good.
Right.
And I kind of maybe do that, the analogy of a marathon. It's almost as if you're running that marathon, but you luckily were able to take a bike for the first section and you're only having to run that last mile. But that means you've got all that extra energy for that last mile. So that's kind of the way that we think about it, of how do we allow it to augment so we've got more energy for those key things where it really, really matters and the human is
Right.
in the loop.
Right, and that's where your real value add is from your, from the talent on your staff, right? You can get something out, but it's really something that works well and has been refined, and and that's that last 50%, or whatever half of the marathon that you were talking about. Yeah,
Definitely.
uh, neat. Um, let's see. There's one question that came in about resilience and reliability. I think we've actually, that was an earlier question, and we talked about that. Maybe I could ask you if I could, because I know we've got some students on and students will be viewing this. I said this to you when we were chatting earlier, that you've got in many ways what I think must be a dream job, right? It's impactful, it's tech rich, it's at the intersection of tech and people. You've had an interesting career path. Um, I'm wondering if you have career advice, especially now that we seem to be at this inflection point with tech. Um, Career advice that you'd like to pass on, I think to students in particular, but say people starting their careers and they may be already out in industry, the kind of skills you think are important, things like that.
Mhm. Oh, definitely. So I've been a strong believer that opportunity is the intersection of timing and preparedness. It's hard to control timing, but preparedness is something that we can always focus on to be ready for when that timing is just right. And the more you do in that preparedness, it can times influence the timing. So the guidance that I've actually generally lived by and that I've always given my team is, please work yourself out of a job. And I'm constantly trying to work myself out of a job. And the reason for that is, if I'm not working myself out of a job, I have two problems. Number one, if a new opportunity opens up within the organization or somewhere else, I'm not going to be considered for that opportunity if folks think I need to be in the job that I'm in right now. So I need to work myself out of a job to be able to be considered for that. And by trying to work myself out of a job and training others and getting that experience out there, other folks are prepared to move into my position or move up in the organization. So I've constantly run that mindset of, by being prepared, by trying to work myself out of a job and having that focus, it opens up more doors in the future, and folks come to you in those critical moments. That's part of the reason why I was running the support organization. I had a heavy tech background in Zoom. What did the organization need? It was a good opportunity for me to transition over to CTO to help the business drive further.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's probably the biggest item of advice. The other thing that I always encourage folks is, find your passion and go, or find your passion and always keep learning on it. That's one of the things that staying curious and constantly wanting to learn more and understand the why of something is so extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And some of that learning is the proactive and learning the fundamentals and deep diving to really get why something works, not just why you do something, but the why behind it. And some of that you can do proactive and outreach. The other side that you can do that is uh, taking the moments when there is a failure. Failure can feel like a bad moment, but it actually is some of the most valuable moments in terms of learning. The meeting that I love the most that we hold here at Zoom every single week is blameless RCA reviews, where any failure within any part of our platform, we go deep on what happened process wise. What were all the scenarios that led to this, and why did that happen?
Mhm.
And it's not to go, this person did a bad job, but more so, what was the sequence of events that caused this? Why didn't we think about that? How does the fundamentals of these protocols work so that we can get better, be more resilient? And doing that deep dive is some of the most insightful uh, learnings that you can have, and understanding why things work the way they do. Failures are rarely something simple. It's the interconnection of how things work together that create a perfect storm.
Right.
But if you don't know the fundamentals of how something works, you can't see around the corner of the perfect storm that could occur. And so those opportunities are chances to learn about those.
Yeah, and it helps individuals, and obviously from a larger group point of view, it allows for that kind of integration that needs to happen. A question came in about, and I think it's related to the AI question, and it relates to what you were saying about being curious and looking ahead. Um, so maybe AI is the answer. I'm not sure, but I'll just read the question to you. I'm curious about what you think the next big frontier might be for tools like Zoom that are fundamentally about leveraging human collaboration.
So, yes, naturally, AI is going to be a part of it right now, but we're constantly looking at how can we use technology to augment human collaboration and connection, and that goes in a variety of ways. So I start to look at things of how do we remove the barriers of language. And you can see stuff where we're using AI, for example, to automatically do language translation in real time to help remove that as a barrier. How can we start to remove the barriers of space between individuals? And that's where we're starting to do more collaborations in things where uh, you might have headsets or other technology uh, helping augment the other senses uh, to make things more 3D or help in touch, but all in the effort to help connect individuals, because we strongly believe that as you build trust and build relationships and build open dialogue, uh, people can advance and get more done together as a group. And so that's where we're constantly looking at technology to see what is that next wave to help remove even more of those barriers so more people can collaborate and get more done together. And that's where I'm super excited, and being in the ecosystem role, I get to see all the startups, all the folks that are thinking about this in different ways.
Mhm.
And it's a very exciting space, and there are a lot of interesting ideas out there of what the future might be.
Okay. Um, one last question, because we always stop 12 o'clock on the dot. It's really about today's experience, and it's a little bit of a gearheady type of question, but one I think that's pretty interesting. Given that so many people connect over cellular in particular, but also Wi-Fi, just if you look at internet connectivity, that's by far the prevalent form. And you've got cellular providers that are now sitting between the the user and you and your pops. And you talked a little bit about that before. Um, but here's the question: do you see poorer performance over cellular 5G Wi-Fi, and do you have plans for addressing that with or without the cooperation of cellular providers? So that's the question verbatim.
I love the question, and the interesting item there actually goes back to the company's founding, which when I look at Eric, he was one of the founding engineers at WebEx, and he saw WebEx acquired by Cisco, and he was looking at the conferencing space there and going, what was the next revolution that was going to happen? And when he looked out into the future, he saw that mobility was going to be the next big thing. And that's back 2010, 2011. And so that's what was the impetus to start Zoom, was realizing that mobility and connections anywhere and everywhere was going to fundamentally change the video conferencing world. And how do we build a platform that was designed to scale and work in that use case?
Mhm.
So that's what kicked it all off. So cellular was top of mind, and it's one of the things that we've designed the platform to keep that in mind. So part of our network protocols actually expect a certain amount of loss. And oftentimes you'll have 10 to 20% packet loss, and you actually won't perceive a difference in the Zoom call because of some of the optimization of that we've done with the protocols. And so mobile is very much something that is a big focus for us to ensure that that is a great experience. And that's part of the reason that a lot of folks have come to Zoom. And that's what I remember way back in 2016, 2017, folks saying, I got off an airplane on my mobile device and I was able to take a video call and it just worked. And that was the selling moment for them.
Uh-huh. Okay, great. Well, we're right about at the end of the hour, so I want to wrap up. Well, first of all, I want to wrap up by reminding everybody that in 2 weeks we have a discussion with Hari Balakrishnan from MIT. Nick McEwen will be having a conversation with him that I know is going to be fabulous. For here, Brendan, I can't tell you how appreciative we are to get a bit of your time and your insights. It's just been a really fabulous conversation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
Well, thank you. And again, thanks to, pass it on to your company and the folks that you work with for just a fabulous platform that means a lot to a lot of people. And congratulations on your Emmy again.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And thanks everyone. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.